The great hall of the alien empire was silent. Thousands of glowing eyes watched from the shadows, waiting. At the center of the hall stood the princess, tall, proud, and unbroken. She wore chains of silver light, yet her head was high, her gaze like fire. Her people whispered that she had betrayed the council, but others said she had only spoken truth. For the rulers of her empire, truth was the greatest crime. The emperor rose from his throne, his voice cold as ice. "You dare to question our laws," he said, "and for that you must be punished." The crowd leaned forward, eager to hear her fate. Some expected death, others hoped for endless exile. But the emperor smiled in a way that chilled the blood of even his loyal servants. "You will be given to a human," he declared, his words echoing across the chamber. Gasps filled the hall. To be given to a human was a fate worse than death for one of her rank. Humans were considered weak, strange, and beneath the notice of the empire. They were tolerated only as laborers, rarely trusted with anything of value. The idea that their proud princess would belong to such a creature was unthinkable. The crowd laughed, their voices sharp and cruel. Some threw mocking words, others called her broken already. But the princess did not flinch. She clenched her jaw, refusing to bow before their cruelty. Soldiers dragged her to the edge of the hall where a portal shimmered. Through it, the human world awaited. She resisted nothing, not because she accepted her punishment, but because she would not give them the joy of seeing her fight like an animal. In her heart burned rage and pride. She swore she would never kneel to a human, never call him master. If she must live with one, she would make his life a prison as well. The portal opened into a quiet land under a sky of blue. The air smelled of earth and green life, unlike the metallic skies of her empire. The soldiers pushed her forward, her chains heavy, her steps echoing with dignity. And there he stood, the human who was to take her. He looked nothing like the warriors of her people. No armor, no crown, no glowing power. Only simple clothes, tired eyes, and rough hands that spoke of work, not war. The crowd of aliens expected him to bow, to grovel at the gift of a princess. But he did not bow. He simply looked at her, silent, as if weighing her soul. The emperor's voice thundered through the portal one last time. "She is your burden now. Human, do with her as you wish. She is punishment made flesh." Then the portal closed, cutting off the laughter and the light of the empire. For the first time in her life, the princess was truly alone. The human stepped forward slowly, his eyes calm, not mocking, not cruel. He reached for her chains, but not to pull, not to strike. Instead, he touched them gently, as if testing how to break them. She stared at him, confused. Was this some new trick, some hidden cruelty? He said nothing, only worked with patient hands until the chains fell. Her wrists were free, her arms light. She rubbed them, staring in disbelief. "Why?" she asked in a voice sharper than a blade. "Why free me?" The human only answered softly, "Because no one deserves chains." His words struck her harder than any weapon. No lord of her empire had ever spoken so. She narrowed her eyes, watching him carefully. Was this weakness or strength? Was he a fool, or was something more dangerous? Her heart whispered questions she could not silence. But her pride stood strong. "You think this makes you my master," she said, her voice filled with fire. The human shook his head. "No, it makes you free." The princess turned away, hiding her trembling hands. She hated the confusion rising inside her. She wanted to despise him, to see him as nothing. But the sound of his voice lingered in her ears. The calm weight of his gaze stayed in her heart. For the first time, she wondered if her punishment was not the end, but the beginning of something she could not yet name. And far away, in the shadows of the galaxy, whispers began to spread. The alien princess had not been broken. She had been given to a human. But perhaps it was the empire itself that would pay the greater price. The princess followed the human through the forest, her steps proud, her silence heavy. Though her chains were gone, she still felt the weight of humiliation pressing on her shoulders. She told herself she would not bend, she would not bow, not even to this strange creature who dared to treat her kindly. Her people had cast her away as punishment, but she would not allow her spirit to be broken. The human walked ahead without looking back, moving with steady calm. He did not act like a master leading a slave, nor like a captor with a prize. He simply moved as if she were an equal, as if her presence beside him was natural. This unsettled her more than chains, more than mockery. Why did he not gloat? Why did he not show pride in owning a princess of the stars? They came to a small shelter built from stone and wood, simple yet strong. It sat on the edge of a river, water flowing clear and bright under the golden light of the sun. The air was fresh. The sounds of birds filled the silence between them. The princess lifted her chin, her voice sharp. "Is this your palace?" The human only gave a faint smile and shook his head. "This is home." Home! Such a small word. Yet it carried warmth she had not felt in the halls of her empire. There, walls of crystal and towers of fire had surrounded her, yet she had always felt cold. Here, in this simple place, she felt something strange, something dangerously close to peace. But she quickly forced the thought away, reminding herself this was not comfort, this was punishment. The human set down a basket of food, fruits from the trees, bread baked in fire, and clean water from the river. He motioned for her to eat, but she crossed her arms, refusing. "I will not take scraps from you," she said, her pride burning. The human sat quietly and began to eat himself, making no argument. He did not command, he did not beg, he simply allowed her choice. Hours passed, and hunger gnawed at her stomach like a beast. At last, she reached for a piece of fruit, her hands trembling with anger at her own weakness. The human said nothing, only nodded once, as if approving her strength in choosing. That night, when darkness spread across the sky, the princess lay awake. The stars above were familiar, yet felt distant. Her people were out there, laughing at her disgrace, believing her broken. But she would not break. She whispered it to herself again and again. She turned her head slightly and saw the human sitting by the fire, sharpening a blade, his eyes calm and steady. Why did he not chain her while she slept? Why did he not guard her as if she might run? Did he truly believe she would stay? The next day, she tested him. She walked toward the forest, her steps quick, as if to escape. But he did not chase her, he did not shout. He only said, "Be careful, the ground is soft near the cliffs." She stopped, turning slowly, her heart pounding with frustration. He had not tried to control her, he had warned her instead. It felt less like a prison, more like freedom, and freedom was more dangerous to her pride than chains had ever been. Days turned into weeks, and the human's ways continued to puzzle her. He asked her opinions when building tools. He listened when she spoke, even when her words were sharp. He never raised his hand against her, never mocked her, never called her slave. Instead, he treated her as though she were more than what the empire had left him. He treated her as though she mattered. One evening, as the fire burned low, the princess asked, "Why do you not hate me? I am punishment given to you, a gift meant to humiliate." The human's gaze was steady, his voice calm. "You are not a punishment. You are a person, and I will treat you as such." The words sank in her heart like water into dry soil. For a moment she could not speak, could not breathe. Her pride screamed at her to reject it, to laugh, to insult him. But another part of her, hidden deep, whispered something else. Could it be that fate had given her not punishment, but a path she had never seen? That night, as the stars blazed above, the princess felt something dangerous grow inside her. It was not submission, not defeat, but a spark of respect. And respect, once given, could become something far greater. She closed her eyes, swearing she would resist, swearing she would never let herself fall. Yet in her heart, she knew the battle was already beginning. Not against chains, not against her empire, but against the wall she had built inside herself. And somewhere in the silent darkness of the galaxy, The Empire watched. They thought she was broken, but they were wrong. They had sent her to a human to destroy her spirit. But instead, something new was rising, something they could not yet see. A bond between alien princess and human heart. A bond that could shake the stars themselves. The days passed quietly, but inside the princess, storms were rising. She had expected cruelty, commands, and endless humiliation. Instead, she found freedom, choices, and strange kindness. And that was far more dangerous to her pride than the sharpest blade. One morning, the human handed her a piece of cloth, simple yet clean. "You should wear this if you want," he said, his voice calm, not demanding. She took it slowly, her eyes narrowing. No one had ever asked her what she wanted, not even when she had been surrounded by jewels and crowns. In the Empire, her choices were illusions, decisions made for her under the mask of power. Here, a human offered her real freedom with a single garment. Her pride told her to throw it back at him, but her hands betrayed her, holding it close. As days turned into weeks, the human included her in small tasks. He showed her how to collect water from the river, how to prepare food, how to carve wood for tools. He never forced her, never ordered her, only explained and let her decide. The princess told herself she was simply studying him, learning his weaknesses. But late at night, when firelight danced across the walls of the shelter, she admitted to herself that she felt something else. She felt seen, truly seen, for the first time in her life. Her spirit, once chained by the Empire's lies, began to rise. She no longer sat in silence, waiting for the hours to pass. She began to speak, to ask questions, to argue, even to laugh when the human's dry humor surprised her. The sound of her own laughter startled her. It had been so long since she had heard it. She wondered if this, too, was weakness, or if it was something far more powerful. One evening, after a long day of gathering food, she sat by the fire, staring into the flames. Her voice was quiet, but her words heavy with meaning. In my empire, I was a princess, yet I was never free. I was surrounded by gold, yet always in chains. The human looked at her, his expression thoughtful. Then perhaps here, without chains, you can be something greater than a princess, he said. Her heart stilled at his words. Greater than a princess, she repeated, the idea twisting inside her like a spark waiting to become fire. The human rose and handed her a carved piece of wood shaped like a crown. It was rough, simple, unpolished, yet made with care. "You don't need jewels to be a queen," he said softly. "You only need to be treated like one." Her hands trembled as she held the crown. Her pride screamed to throw it into the fire, but her soul whispered to keep it close. She pressed it against her chest, feeling warmth spread through her. And for the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a life beyond punishment, beyond shame. But peace never lasted long in the galaxy. Far away, rumors spread of the alien princess who lived free among humans. Some whispered she was broken, others whispered she was dangerous. Whispers became talk, and talk became fear. The Empire did not like symbols, and she was becoming one. The princess did not know yet, but eyes were already turning toward her. Enemies she had never met were beginning to plan. That night, she dreamed of her empire, of the cold throne she once stood beside. She saw the faces of those who had laughed as she was cast away. And then she saw the human's eyes, steady, kind, unyielding. The images battled inside her mind, a war between past and present. When she woke, her hand still held the wooden crown close to her chest. Her pride whispered lies, but her heart whispered truth. She was no longer the same woman who had stepped through the portal in chains. She was becoming something else, something new, a queen without chains, a queen not crowned by an empire, but by the heart of a human. And though she did not yet know it, this was only the beginning, because the Empire would never allow such a story to continue unchallenged. They would come for her, they would test her, they would try to break her again. But this time, she would not stand alone. For beside her stood a human who saw not punishment, but destiny. And together, they would shape a future the stars themselves could not ignore. The Empire believed the princess had been silenced. They thought she lived in shame, far from power, forgotten among the weak. But the truth was carried like fire through hidden mouths, across marketplaces, in dark corners of alien cities, in whispers shared between slaves and servants. The story grew, the story spread. The princess was not broken. She was alive, and beside her stood a human. The oppressed races of the Empire clung to this rumor like a lifeline. For years, they had lived in fear under chains of fire and laws of cruelty. Now, they spoke quietly of hope, that if a human could defy the Empire's punishment, perhaps they too could rise. Hope was dangerous, and the Empire knew it. Back in a quiet valley by the river, the princess felt the change. Strangers began to arrive, small groups at first, broken souls who had escaped the Empire. They came seeking the princess, but found instead a woman sitting by a fire, wearing a crown of carved wood. They bowed, not to her chains, but to her spirit. "You give us courage," one whispered. "If you live free, maybe we can too." The princess's heart wavered. She had not asked to be anyone's symbol, yet their eyes glowed with belief, and belief was stronger than fear. The human saw this too, but his face remained calm. He spoke little, yet every word carried weight. "Do not kneel to us," he told them. "Stand tall. Your freedom is not ours to give, it is yours to claim." The people listened, and their hearts caught fire. The princess watched him, realizing his strength was not in weapons or armies, but in the way he lifted others. And each day, she felt her own chains of pride grow weaker, replaced with something else, something greater. But not all who heard the whispers carried hope. The Empire's spies walked among the people, listening, searching, reporting. Soon, the Council of Lords gathered in the cold throne hall, their voices sharp with fear. "She is a danger," one snarled. "Her punishment has become a weapon against us. She must be erased," another growled. "The human too." The Emperor's eyes burned with fury. "Send soldiers," he commanded. "Burn their refuge, bring her back in chains, and kill the human." The storm was coming, and the princess felt it in her bones. One night, as the river glowed under silver light, she turned to the human, her voice heavy. "They will come. The Empire cannot allow me to live free." The human nodded, his eyes steady. "Then let them come," he said. "We will not run. We will not bow." Her chest tightened at his words. All her life, she had been surrounded by armies sworn to protect her, yet she had never felt safe. Now, with only one human by her side, she felt stronger than she had ever known. It frightened her, it thrilled her, it made her wonder if destiny had brought her here, not punishment. The next morning, more refugees arrived, carrying scars of the Empire's cruelty. They begged to stay, to fight, to stand beside the princess and the human. She looked at their faces, saw the hunger in their eyes for freedom. For the first time, she did not see herself as a fallen princess. She saw herself as something more, not just a symbol, not just a leader, but the beginning of change. That evening, she stood before them, her voice clear and strong. "I was given to a human as punishment. They thought I would be broken, but I was not. They thought I would be forgotten, but I am not. They thought I would bow, but I will never bow again." The crowd erupted in cries of hope, their voices rising like thunder across the valley. The human stood at her side, his hand resting lightly on the wooden crown she now wore proudly. To him, she was already more than a queen, and soon the galaxy would see it too. But in the distance, shadows moved, ships of war slicing through the skies. The Empire had heard the whispers, and they were coming with fire. The first battle was waiting, and in that moment, the princess realized her punishment had become her purpose. Not just to survive, but to rise. Not just to live free, but to lead others into freedom. And when the Empire came, they would not find a broken woman. They would find a queen reborn in the fire of rebellion. The morning was quiet, too quiet. The river moved gently. The birds sang in the trees, yet the air carried a heavy weight. The princess felt it in her chest, the silence before the storm. She stood at the edge of the valley, her eyes scanning the horizon. And then she saw it, dark shapes cutting across the sky, ships of the Empire descending like vultures. The refugees stirred in fear, whispers of panic spreading through the camp. Some clutched their children, others grabbed whatever tools or weapons they could find. The princess raised her hand, her voice sharp as steel. "Do not fear. They want us broken, they want us silent, but we will not give them what they want." Her words carried strength, but inside, her heart raced. She had never led a battle without an army, without warships, without power. Now, all she had was courage, a handful of rebels, and one human. The human stood by her side, calm as ever. He carried no glowing weapon, no shining armor, only a simple blade and the strength of his will. When others shook with fear, his steady presence anchored them. The princess glanced at him and felt her resolve harden. If he could stand unshaken before the Empire, then so could she. The first of the Empire's soldiers stepped onto the ground, their armor black, their eyes cold. They marched forward with perfect discipline, weapons glowing with deadly light. The commander raised his voice, filled with arrogance. "Princess, by order of the Empire, you are to return in chains. Your human is to be executed, and all who shelter you will be destroyed." The words cut the air like a blade, and fear spread again through the crowd. The princess stepped forward, her wooden crown resting firmly on her head. Her voice rang out like thunder. "No, I will not return, I will not kneel, and I will not be silent." The commander sneered, raising his hand to signal attack. But before he could speak again, the human moved. He rushed forward with a speed no one expected, striking down the first soldier with a single blow. The battlefield erupted, chaos and fire exploding across the valley. The refugees fought with desperation, using sticks, stones, and stolen blades. The Empire's soldiers were trained, disciplined, and armed with advanced weapons. Yet for every strike they gave, the rebels answered with fury born of freedom. The princess fought beside the human, her heart burning with fire. She had been trained in the ways of her people, swift strikes, and precise movement. Every motion was fueled by rage and pride, yet now also by hope. She cut down soldiers with the grace of a queen reclaiming her throne. At her side, the human fought like a storm, unyielding, unstoppable. He took wounds but never faltered, each strike stronger than the last. The Empire had sent soldiers to break them, but instead, the soldiers began to falter under the weight of resistance. The battle raged until the ground was stained with fire and ash. The air filled with the cries of both despair and courage. The princess raised her voice above the chaos, shouting to the rebels, "Stand, fight, do not let them take this from us." Her words poured strength into weary bodies. For the first time, many believed they could truly win. The commander tried to strike her down, his blade glowing with deadly power. But the human intercepted, his weapon clashing against the commander's. The sound echoed across the battlefield, a clash not just of metal, but of worlds. The commander fought with arrogance, but the human fought with purpose. And in the end, purpose proved stronger. With a final strike, the commander fell, and the Empire's soldiers broke, retreating into the sky. When the battle ended, the valley was scarred, but it still stood. The refugees gathered around the princess and the human, their eyes filled with awe. They had not only survived, they had won. It was a small victory, but it was enough to ignite hope like wildfire across the galaxy. The princess looked at the human, her chest heavy with emotions she could not name. "You fought for me," she whispered. He shook his head, wiping blood from his brow. "No, I fought with you." Her heart trembled at the words. For the first time, she felt the truth of who she was becoming. Not a fallen princess, not a prisoner, not a punishment, but a leader, a queen without chains. And with the human at her side, she knew the Empire's hold on the galaxy was beginning to crack. The valley was quiet after the storm of battle. The air carried the smell of smoke and blood. Yet within it there was also something new. Hope, fragile but alive. The refugees walked among the ruins, their faces tired, but their eyes brighter than before. They had fought the Empire and lived, and that truth alone gave them strength. The princess stood at the river's edge, her reflection staring back at her. Her hair tangled, her clothes torn, her face streaked with dust and ash. She no longer looked like the royal heir of a mighty empire. She looked like a fighter, a survivor, a woman reborn in fire. She touched the wooden crown the human had given her, holding it close to her chest. It was rough, simple, nothing compared to the golden circlet she once wore. Yet somehow, it meant more than all the jewels of her empire. The human approached, his steps slow but steady. He bore cuts and bruises, his arm bandaged from the battle. Yet his eyes were calm, filled with the same quiet strength she had come to know. "You should rest," he said softly, his voice carrying no command, only care. She turned to him, her pride wrestling with gratitude. "You bled for me," she said, her voice sharp but not cold. The human shook his head, his answer steady. "No, I bled with you." Those words struck her heart again, the same as they had on the battlefield. She had always been surrounded by warriors who claimed to fight for her, for the Empire, for power. But never had anyone fought beside her simply because they chose to. Never had anyone called her equal in battle. She felt a warmth rising within her, dangerous yet undeniable. Her pride told her to resist, yet her heart whispered it was already too late. That evening, as the camp gathered around the fire, the refugees began to chant. They called her queen, not of an empire, but of freedom. Their voices rose like thunder, shaking the air. The princess lifted her hand, silencing them, her voice clear. "I am no queen of crowns or thrones. I am no ruler of palaces or armies. But if you see me as queen, then know this: I will wear no crown of gold. I will wear only the crown of your trust." The people cheered, their cries echoing across the valley. And in that moment, she realized that power was not in jewels, not in titles, not in bloodlines. Power was in the bond between hearts. Later, the human stepped forward, carrying the wooden crown he had carved. He placed it gently upon her head, his eyes steady, his hands trembling only slightly. "You are my queen," he said, not as a subject, not as a servant, but as a man speaking truth. The crowd fell silent, watching, waiting. The princess closed her eyes, her heart pounding. She felt no shame, no chains, no weight of punishment. Instead, she felt strength like she had never known. Her voice trembled but grew firm. "Then let this crown be the only one I need." The refugees erupted with cheers, their belief stronger than ever. The human stepped back, his eyes never leaving hers. For him, the crown was not a symbol of power, but of love, loyalty, and respect. For her, it was not a reminder of punishment, but of destiny. The Empire had given her away to break her, but instead, they had created a queen crowned by the heart. But even as joy filled the valley, shadows lingered. The Empire was not defeated, only wounded. Their pride would not allow this insult to stand. Even now, ships gathered in the dark, preparing for war greater than before. The princess felt the weight of what was to come. She knew the first battle was only the beginning. The war for freedom had just begun. That night, she sat by the fire with the human beside her. For a long time, neither spoke, the silence between them heavy but not empty. Finally, she whispered, her voice softer than she meant. "I was given as punishment, yet here I stand, crowned by you, not as a slave, but as a queen." The human's eyes shone with quiet truth. "You were never punishment. You were always more than they could see." Her chest tightened, her pride crumbling under the weight of her heart. For the first time, She allowed herself to believe in something dangerous, that perhaps her destiny was not to be broken, but to lead, and not to lead alone, but with him at her side. The valley did not sleep. Though the fires burned bright and the songs of victory echoed, every heart knew the truth. The empire would return, and this time they would not send a handful of soldiers. They would come with fleets, with fire, with everything they had to crush hope before it spread. The princess stood on a ridge above the camp, the wooden crown resting on her head. The human stood beside her, silent, steady, his presence like a wall against the darkness. Below them, the refugees sharpened blades, built defenses, and prepared themselves. They were not an army, not trained, not equipped, but they were ready because they had something the Empire could not destroy: belief. Across the galaxy, the Empire's fleets gathered, black ships blotting out the stars. The Emperor sat upon his throne, fury burning in his eyes. "She thinks herself a queen," he spat. "She thinks a human makes her strong. We will burn her world until nothing remains." And so the warships launched, cutting through the void toward the valley. The morning sky turned dark as shadows fell. The Empire's fleet descended, fire raining from above, shaking the ground. The refugees stood their ground, their fear swallowed by courage. The princess raised her voice, her words sharp as blades. "We will not kneel, we will not run. Today we fight not as slaves, but as free souls." Her voice carried across the valley, reaching every ear, igniting every heart. The battle began with thunder, the Empire's soldiers pouring from their ships. Their weapons burned bright, their armor shone like death. But the rebels met them with fury, striking not with fear, but with desperation for freedom. The human charged at the front, his blade flashing, his strength unyielding. At his side, the princess fought with fire in her soul, her every strike a declaration of defiance. The Empire's commander, greater than the last, stepped forward, his weapon glowing with deadly power. "You will fall today," he roared. "You are nothing without the Empire." The princess lifted her crown of wood, her eyes blazing. "I am nothing with the Empire, but with them, with him, I am everything." She leapt into the fight, clashing against him, her movements swift and fierce. The human joined her, and together they fought as one. Every strike of his blade matched by the fire of her will. Every step he took, she was beside him, their bond unbroken. The commander faltered, his arrogance shattering under their unity. And with one final strike, they brought him down. The soldiers of the Empire froze, their lines broken, their courage gone. One by one, they fell back, retreating into the sky. The fleet above turned, burning engines carrying them away. The valley roared with victory, voices rising in a storm of triumph. When the battle ended, the princess stood among her people, her chest heavy, her heart trembling. They chanted her name, not as a fallen princess, but as a queen of freedom. And when she turned, she saw the human watching her, his eyes filled with quiet pride. He stepped forward, his voice steady. "You were given to me as punishment, but I see no punishment before me. I see a queen." The words struck her deeper than any blade. Her eyes softened, and for once, she let the walls fall. "You crown me not with gold, but with your heart," she whispered. "And with you, I am more than a queen of one people. I am queen of two worlds." The crowd erupted, their voices shaking the air. The wooden crown shone in the firelight, more powerful than any jewel. And the princess raised her hand, her voice carrying above all others. "Today we have shown the Empire that fear will not rule us. Today we rise as free. Today we stand as one." The valley thundered with cries of hope. The galaxy would remember this day. The Empire had tried to break her, but instead they had created a legend. She was no longer the punished daughter of an empire. She was the queen of freedom, crowned not by power, but by love. Beside her stood the human, her equal, her protector, her heart. and together they would lead a rebellion that would shake the stars themselves.